This story first appeared in Borderland, a quarterly magazine devoted to spiritualism and psychic research. This magazine was launched in London in 1893 and continued until 1897 under the editorship of William Thomas Stead, a famous English journalist and reformer who had a deep interest in the supernatural. Stead used Borderland as a platform to publish accounts of unusual experiences, ghost stories, and spiritual investigations, often sent in by people who claimed to have witnessed such events. One such account came from Mr. W. D. Addison, a resident of Riga, the capital of present-day Latvia. Addison wrote down a personal experience that he had gone through and submitted it to Stead. Trusting in its authenticity, Stead published the story in Borderland. It was in February 1884 that the incidents I am about to relate occurred to me, and the story is well known to my immediate friends. 5 weeks previously, my wife had presented me with our first baby, and our house being a small one, I had to sleep on a bed made up in the drawing room, a spacious but cozy apartment and the last place in which one would expect ghosts to select for their wanderings. On that particular night, I retired to my couch soon after 10 and fell asleep almost the moment I was between the sheets. Instead of sleeping, as I am thankful to say is my habit, straight through till morning, I woke up after a short, dreamless sleep with the dim consciousness that someone had called me by name. I was just turning the idea over in my mind when all doubts were solved by my hearing my name pronounced in a faint whisper. Now, the nurse who was in attendance on the baby and who slept in the dressing room adjoining our bedroom had been ill for the past few days, and on the previous evening my wife had come and asked me to assist her with the baby. As soon, therefore, as I heard this whisper, I turned round, thinking, it is the baby again. The room had 3 windows in it. The night was moonless but starlit. There was snow on the ground, and therefore snowlight, and the blinds being up, the room was by no means dark. The first thing I noticed when I turned around was the figure of a woman standing near the foot of my bed. At first, I thought it was my wife. "What is wrong?" I asked. But the figure stayed silent and did not move. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I saw that she had a grey shawl over her head and shoulders, and she was much shorter than my wife. I stared at her quietly, trying to guess who she was. Ghosts or spirits never even crossed my mind, and the unclear shape of this quiet figure did not seem strange to me at that moment, though it did later. I spoke to her again, this time in the local language. Still there was no reply. Then I thought perhaps it was our servant girl, who sometimes walked in her sleep. There was a small table behind the head of my bed. Without looking away from the figure, I reached for the matchbox that was on it. I took the matchbox in my hands, but just as I was about to light a match, the figure suddenly began to rise from the floor and move backward toward the window. At the same time, it quickly faded and blurred into the grey light that was coming in. And before I could strike the match, it was gone. I lit the candle, jumped out of bed, and ran to the door. It was fastened. To the left of the drawing room there was a boudoir, separated only by a curtain. This room was empty too, and the door was likewise fastened. I rubbed my eyes. I was puzzled. It struck me now for the first time that the figure had a hazy look. I also realized that my wife was the only person who called me Willie, and certainly the only one who could give the word its English pronunciation. I first searched both the drawing room and the boudoir, and then, opening the door, stepped into the passage. I went to my wife's door and listened. The baby was crying and my wife was awake, so I knocked and was admitted. Knowing her to be strong-minded and not nervous, I quietly related my experience. She expressed astonishment and asked if I was not afraid to return to my bed in the drawing room. However, I was not. and after chatting for a few moments, I went back to my quarters, fastened the door, and, getting into bed, thought the whole matter over very quietly. I could think of no explanation for the occurrence, and feeling sleepy, blew out the light and was soon sound asleep again. After a short, deep, dreamless sleep, I woke up again. This time my face was turned toward the middle window. Right there, close against it, stood the figure once more. Because it was near the light, it looked like a very dark shadow. I quickly reached for the matches, but in doing so I knocked over the table. My candlestick, watch, keys, and other things fell down with a loud crash. Still, I kept my eyes fixed on the figure. I saw that whatever it was moving straight toward me. In another moment, it would block my way to the door. The thought of facing the unknown in the dark was terrifying. At once, I grabbed the bedclothes, holding one corner in each hand, and rushed straight at the figure. I suppose I thought that by covering its head, I could stop the attack. The next moment, I found myself on my knees on the sofa by the window, with my arms resting on the windowsill. Suddenly, I realized the figure was now behind me. I had passed right through it. I quickly turned around, only to find myself surrounded by a darkness so thick and heavy that it felt as if it was pressing down on me from every side. I could not move. The bedclothes I had grabbed were hanging over my left arm, while my other arm felt heavy, as if pressed down by an invisible weight. I tried to call for help, but my tongue was stuck. It felt dry and swollen, as if it had grown several inches thick, and it clung to the roof of my mouth. I could not speak a single word. After a terrible struggle, I finally managed to make a sound. Broken words came out, half prayer, half words of fear. Then my mind made one desperate effort. It felt like a sudden electric shock, and my body was free, as if I had torn myself out of something holding me. Within seconds, I had opened the door and was standing in the passage, hearing my heart pounding loudly. I was no longer afraid, but I felt as if I had just run for miles and another few steps would have killed me. I went again to my wife's door. Hearing that she was awake with the baby, I knocked, and she opened the door. She saw the state I was in, sweat dripping down my face, my hair damp, and my heartbeat so loud it could be heard several steps away. I cannot explain what I saw. As soon as my story got out, the people who used to live in the house told me that they had once put a visitor into that very drawing room. That visitor said the room was haunted and refused to stay there.